I was folding my tent when Mum's voice cut through the hallway like a blade I'd heard too many times before. "Sienna, we need to talk." I didn't look up from the sleeping bag I was rolling. 3 months of planning, 3 months of researching trails, saving money from my part-time job at the library, coordinating with my hiking group. The Cascade Range wasn't just a trip. It was supposed to be my first real adventure. The kind where you sleep under stars so thick they look like spilled salt, where the air tastes different because you earned it through hours of climbing. "Your sister needs the car this weekend," Mum said from my doorway, her tone already apologetic, already decided. I stopped mid-roll. "What?" "Olivia's having her sleepover, you know, the big one she's been planning. Some of her friends live across town and we need to pick them up. Plus, we'll need to do a supply run for snacks and—" "Mum." I stood up slowly, tent poles clattering to my bedroom floor. "I booked this trip months ago. I put down a deposit for the campsite. My group is counting on me to drive because I'm the only one with a vehicle that fits all the gear." She twisted her wedding ring, that nervous habit that meant she'd already made up her mind and just needed me to accept it. "I know, sweetheart, but this is really important to Olivia. She's only turning 16 once. I'm 19, and this is important to me. You can go camping anytime. Liv's social life is at a crucial point right now. You remember how hard high school can be. The thing about being the older daughter is that your milestones become commonplace, unremarkable. The first time you do something, parents take pictures and cry. The second time, they barely look up from their phones. I was the rough draft, and Olivia was the final copy they actually cared about displaying. "What about Dad's car?" I tried, even though I knew. "He needs it for golf on Saturday. It's his only day off." Of course, Dad's leisure versus my long-planned trip. The math had already been done, and I'd lost before the equation even started. "Can't Olivia's friends get rides from their own parents?" Mum's expression shifted into that patient but firm look, the one that meant I was being difficult. "Sienna, don't be selfish. Family comes first. You'll have other chances to go camping." Selfish. That word landed in my chest like a stone. I was selfish for wanting to keep plans I'd made months ago, but Olivia wasn't selfish for demanding the car with a week's notice. Dad wasn't selfish for prioritising golf. The word only ever pointed in one direction, toward me, whenever I wanted something that inconvenienced them. I called my hiking group leader that night. Jessica was understanding, but I could hear the disappointment. "We'll miss you. 4th spot's hard to fill last minute." She paused. "You sure there's no other way?" There wasn't. I'd already explored every option, every alternative, every compromise. The answer was always the same. Olivia's wants outweighed my needs. Saturday morning, I helped load the car with sleeping bags and snack boxes, and the portable speaker Olivia just had to have. She was glowing, texting her friends, barely acknowledging my existence, except to ask if I could move faster because Taylor's mum was waiting. Dad emerged from the garage with his golf clubs. "Thanks for being a team player, kiddo," he said, ruffling my hair like I was 12. "Family first, right?" I watched them both drive away, Mum toward town to collect Olivia's friends, Dad toward the country club where dues cost more than my entire camping trip. I stood in the driveway holding my packed backpack that had nowhere to go. The house felt enormous and empty. I could hear Olivia's music already playing in her room, the bass thudding through the walls. Preparation for the invasion of girls who would take over every common space, who would scream laugh at inside jokes I wasn't part of, who would treat me like furniture if I dared to exist in my own home. I went to my room and unpacked my camping gear piece by piece. Each item felt like a small humiliation. The water purifier I'd researched for weeks. The trail mix I'd assembled in perfect ratios. The new hiking boots I'd broken in with hours of walking around the neighbourhood, preparing for terrain I wouldn't see. Through my window, I could see the street where my hiking group would have met, where I should have been loading gear into my car, double-checking maps, feeling that flutter of excitement before an adventure. Instead, I was home. invisible, convenient. That night, while Olivia's friends shrieked over some movie downstairs, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The house smelled like popcorn and nail polish. Someone's laugh was too loud, too sharp. I put in earpods and pulled my blanket over my head, trying to create some pocket of space that was mine. But the music vibrated through the floor. Their voices carried up the stairs. Even with my door locked, I couldn't escape the proof that Olivia's happiness required my sacrifice, and everyone thought that was fair. Around midnight, I heard Mum's voice. "Keep it down, girls. Your sister's trying to sleep." Your sister. As if I was the inconvenience. As if their volume was the problem, not the fact that I'd given up something meaningful so they could have something fun. I pressed my face into my pillow and felt something crack inside me. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just a quiet fracture, the sound a frozen lake makes before it breaks. I was tired of being the understanding one, the flexible one, the one who always adjusted so everyone else could be comfortable. I fell asleep thinking about mountain air and star-filled skies I'd never see, about trails I'd never hike, about the person I might have become if anyone had ever chosen me first. I didn't wake up Sunday morning. That's the strange truth of it. Sunday came and went, and Monday, and more days I didn't count. There was no accident, no dramatic moment, just the slow realization that I'd stopped mattering enough to keep going, that I'd been erased so many times I'd finally faded completely. The last thing I remember from that first life is Olivia's voice, muffled through my bedroom door. "Is Sienna still sleeping? She's been in there forever." "Let her rest," Mum said. "She's probably tired." They were so used to me being quiet, being out of the way, that they didn't notice when quiet became absence, when out of the way became gone. The end was just another moment I made convenient for everyone else. Then I opened my eyes. I was folding my tent, and Mum's voice was cutting through the hallway. "Sienna, we need to talk." My hand stopped. The sleeping bag was half rolled on my bed. The tent poles were scattered on my floor. I knew what she was going to say before she said it, knew it with the certainty of someone who'd heard it before, who'd lived through the entire chain of events, and understood exactly where each choice led. "Your sister needs the car this weekend." I looked at Mum standing in my doorway, wedding ring already twisting on her finger, apology already forming in her eyes. But this time I saw something else too. The assumption, the certainty that I would fold, that I would understand, that I would sacrifice because that's what I always did. Not this time. "No," I said. Mum blinked. "What?" "No, I'm not giving up my camping trip." My voice was calm, steady, certain. "I booked this 3 months ago. Olivia can figure out her own transportation." "Sienna, that's not fair to your sister. It's not fair to me." I stood up, and something in my posture must have been different because Mum actually stepped back. "I put down a deposit. I made commitments to people depending on me. Olivia had a week to plan her sleepover. That's her problem, not mine. Your father and I thought, you thought I'd give in. You thought I'd be the easy one, the convenient one." I picked up my backpack and set it by the door. "I'm not doing that anymore." Mum's face cycled through expressions, surprise, irritation, something that might have been respect. "We're a family, we support each other." "Then support me." I met her eyes. Support me keeping plans I've had for 3 months. Support me doing something I've been excited about. For once, let Olivia be the one who has to adjust. I walked past her toward the kitchen. Behind me, I heard her calls, "Dad." Their voices were low, urgent, confused. I pulled out my phone and texted Jessica, "Still on for this weekend? I'll be there." Her response came immediately. "Yes, we're going to have an amazing time." For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt light. Dad found me at lunch, golf clubs already loaded in his car outside. "Your mother says you're being difficult about the car situation." "I'm being clear about my boundaries." He frowned. "Since when? Do you have boundaries with family? Since I realised I matter too, I took a bite of my sandwich, calm and unhurried. You have your golf. Olivia wants her sleepover. I want my camping trip. Why is mine the only activity that's negotiable? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. We're not saying you don't matter. Then act like it. The words hung in the air between us. Dad looked uncomfortable, caught between the daughter he thought he knew and this stranger who wouldn't accommodate him. Finally, he cleared his throat. I'll talk to your mother. But I was already done talking. Saturday morning arrived with golden light and clear skies. I loaded my gear into my car while the house was still quiet. My camping equipment fit perfectly in the trunk, organised and ready. I triple-checked my supplies, my maps, my emergency kit. Olivia's bedroom door was still closed. I wondered if she'd even noticed that her plans had been disrupted, or if Mum had scrambled to find other solutions. I wondered if she'd learned that other people's time and effort and dreams weren't just obstacles to her happiness. I didn't wonder long. I had a mountain to climb. The drive to the meeting point took an hour. Jessica and the others were already there, loading their packs, checking gear, radiating that nervous excitement that comes before a real adventure. When I pulled up, Jessica actually cheered. Sienna, you made it! Told you I would. We drove in convoy toward the Cascade Range, 4 cars winding through increasingly remote roads, civilization falling away behind us like a skin I was shedding. The music on my stereo was my choice. The windows were down because I wanted them down. Every mile felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. The trailhead appeared around noon, marked by weathered wood and promise. We parked, shouldered our packs, and started climbing. The first hour was hard. My legs burned, my lungs worked overtime, sweat soaked through my shirt. But it was the good kind of hard, the kind that builds something instead of destroying it. Every step took me farther from the person who folded herself small, who made herself convenient, who disappeared to make room for others. Jessica hiked beside me, pointing out wildflowers and geological formations. You okay? You're quiet. I'm perfect, I said and meant it, hers. By the time we reached our campsite, the sun was starting its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. We set up tents with practiced efficiency, started a fire, boiled water for our dehydrated meals. The temperature dropped as darkness came, and the stars emerged like something miraculous. I sat on a rock at the edge of our campsite, looking out over valleys that stretched for miles, at peaks still catching the last light. The air tasted exactly how I'd imagined, clean and sharp and earned. First time really camping? One of the other hikers asked. His name was Daniel, a graduate student who'd hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. First time doing what I wanted despite my family, I said. He nodded like he understood. Hardest part of growing up is realizing you're allowed to disappoint people. The words settled into my chest like truth. I'd spent 19 years trying not to disappoint anyone, bending and accommodating and erasing myself. And I'd still disappointed them, just by wanting something for myself. That night, I slept in my tent with the sound of wind in the trees and the knowledge that I'd chosen me. When I woke before dawn and unzipped my tent to see the sun rise, from our mountainside campsite, I felt something I'd never felt before, proud of myself for existing. We hiked for 3 days. Each one revealed new terrain, new challenges, new moments of beauty so sharp they hurt. We summited a peak on the second day, standing above the cloud line with the world spread below us like proof that vastness existed, that there were places my family's dynamics couldn't reach. Jessica took a photo of us at the summit, faces flushed and grinning. This one's going in my forever collection, she said. When I looked at that photo later, I barely recognised myself. I looked alive, present, real. Sunday evening, we hiked back down to the trailhead, muscles sore and spirits high. My car smelled like campfire and pine needles. I drove home slowly, reluctant to return, but carrying something with me that distance and obligation couldn't erase. The house was quiet when I arrived. I unloaded my gear in the garage, taking my time, not rushing to make myself small again. Mum was in the kitchen when I came inside. She looked up from her laptop, and something in her expression was different. Careful. "How was your trip?" "Incredible." I filled a glass of water, drank it slowly. "Best weekend of my life." "That's good." She paused. "Olivia's sleepover was nice too." I didn't ask for details, didn't perform interest, just nodded and headed toward my room with my pack. "Sienna?" I turned. Mom twisted her wedding ring. "You were right about the car, about us expecting you to always be the flexible one." She looked uncomfortable saying it, like the words cost her something. "I'm sorry." The apology landed differently than I expected. It didn't fix everything, didn't erase years of being second priority, but it was a crack in the pattern, a small acknowledgement that I'd been right to stand my ground. "Thanks," I said. "I appreciate that." I went to my room and unpacked. Each item I pulled from my backpack carried memory. The water purifier that had given us clean drinking water from a mountain stream. The trail mix that had tasted like victory at the summit. The boots that had carried me to places I'd only dreamed about. That night at dinner, Dad asked about the hike, actual curiosity in his voice, not just politeness. I told them about the summit, about the stars, about the feeling of accomplishing something hard. Olivia mostly looked at her phone, but I didn't care. Her attention wasn't required for my experience to be valuable. "Maybe we could do a family camping trip sometime," Dad suggested. "Maybe," I said, non-committal. I'd learned that some experiences were better without the weight of family dynamics, without the expectation that I'd carry more than my share. The weeks that followed brought subtle shifts. Mum asked before assuming I was available to help with Olivia's activities. Dad invited me to things without making it sound like obligation. Olivia barely noticed, still orbiting in her own world, but that was fine. I wasn't looking for her validation anymore. I started planning my next trip, a solo backpacking journey through the Olympic Peninsula, 5 days of just me and the wilderness. When I mentioned it at dinner, Mum's first instinct was visible. That flicker of concern, that impulse to suggest, maybe it wasn't safe, maybe I should wait, maybe someone should come with me. But then she caught herself. "That sounds amazing. Do you need help planning?" "I've got it covered," I said. "But thanks." The summer unfolded with more adventures. I hiked every weekend. Jessica's group organised trips. I learned to read topographical maps, to identify edible plants, to build fires in wind and rain. My body grew stronger, my confidence more solid. I was becoming someone I actually liked. Olivia graduated high school that June. It was a big production, ceremony, party, relatives flying in from 3 states. I helped where asked and set boundaries where needed. When Aunt Carol suggested I should defer my college plans to help Olivia adjust to university life, I smiled politely and said, "Olivia's capable of adjusting herself." Aunt Carol looked scandalised. Mum looked relieved. I'd been accepted to a college 8 hours away, with a strong environmental science programme and hiking clubs and distance from family dynamics that expected me to shrink. Move in was in August, and I'd never been more ready for anything. The week before I left, Olivia knocked on my bedroom door, unusual enough that I actually looked up from packing. "Can I come in?" "Sure." She perched on the edge of my bed, picking at my sleeping bag. "So you're really going? Really going? That's far." I waited. Olivia wasn't usually one for meaningful conversations, especially not with me. "I just wanted to say..." She twisted her hands together, suddenly looking younger. "I didn't realise how much Mum and Dad asked you to give up stuff, for me." The admission surprised me. "You're noticing now?" Taylor pointed it out, about the camping trip thing. She said her older brother would have told her to figure it out herself, that it wasn't his job to sacrifice for her convenience. Olivia met my eyes. I guess I thought that's just how it worked, that you didn't mind. I minded. The words were simple, honest. I minded a lot. I'm sorry. It was the first time she'd ever apologized to me for anything that mattered. I studied her face, seeing something genuine there, something that acknowledged I was a person with feelings and not just a supporting character in her story. Thank you, I said. That means something. She nodded, stood awkwardly. Good luck at college. Send pictures of wherever you end up hiking. I will. After she left, I sat on my bed and felt something settle. Not forgiveness exactly, but closure. The understanding that people could grow, could see what they hadn't seen before, could acknowledge harm, even if it didn't undo the damage. Move-in day arrived with summer heat and nervous energy. I loaded my car with everything I owned that mattered: camping gear, books, clothes that felt like me. Mum cried a little. Dad gave me a too-long hug and a credit card for emergencies. Olivia helped carry boxes and didn't ask me to stay. The drive to campus took all day. I stopped at a scenic overlook halfway there, pulled out my trail mix, and sat on a guardrail, looking at mountains in the distance. My phone buzzed with messages. Jessica wishing me luck. Daniel sending a photo of a trail he thought I'd love. Mum asking if I'd arrived safely, even though I'd only left an hour ago. I texted back reassurances and gratitude. Then, I put my phone away and just breathed. The air smelled like pine and possibility. The road ahead curved out of sight, promising unknowns I was ready to meet. College was everything I needed it to be. My roommate was another environmental science major who kept an organised shelf of hiking guidebooks. Our dorm was near trails that led into protected forest. The professors actually remembered my name, engaged with my ideas, treated me like someone worth paying attention to. I joined the Outdoor Adventure Club immediately. By October, I'd summited 3 more peaks, learned to kayak, and spent a weekend building trail infrastructure with a conservation group. My body was strong. My mind was clear. I was becoming exactly who I'd hoped I could be. Thanksgiving approached with the expected family pressure. Mum called weekly, asking if I was coming home, voice hopeful and slightly desperate. I thought about it, weighed the options, and ultimately decided to spend the holiday on a group backpacking trip instead. You're not coming home? Mum's voice carried disappointment. Not this year. I already committed to this trip. Silence on the other end. Then quietly. Okay, I understand. And I think she actually did. Something had shifted the weekend. I'd refused to give up my camping trip. She'd learned I was serious about prioritising myself, that accommodation wasn't my default setting anymore. We'll miss you, she added. I'll miss you too, but I'll be home for Christmas. We left it there. I spent Thanksgiving in the Shenandoah Valley, hiking through autumn colours so vibrant they looked painted, eating dehydrated turkey around a campfire, grateful for friends who celebrated me showing up as myself. Christmas did bring me home, but I came as a visitor, not a resident. I slept in my old room, but kept my camping gear packed in my car, ready to leave when I chose. The house felt smaller, like I'd outgrown it in fundamental ways. Olivia was home from her college too, full of stories about sorority life and parties and boys. She'd found her crowd, her people, her place. We were cordial, occasionally friendly, but we'd never be close. Some relationships are about proximity, not connection. On Christmas Eve, I found Dad in the garage organising his golf clubs. He looked up when I entered, smiled. Need something? Just wanted to say thanks. For the emergency credit card. I haven't needed it yet, but it makes me feel safer knowing it's there. He set down the club he was holding. You know, your mother and I, we didn't realise how much we asked of you until you stopped saying yes. I know. You seem really happy at school. I am really happy. He nodded slowly. Good. That's what matters. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No tears or grand revelations. Just a father acknowledging his daughter's happiness and meaning it. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. I left the day after Christmas, citing an ice climbing workshop that started on the 27th. Mum hugged me tight and told me to be safe. Olivia said she'd see me at spring break, maybe. Dad slipped an extra $100 into my hand and told me to get good hiking socks. As I drove away, watching my childhood home shrink in the rearview mirror, I didn't feel sad, I felt free. The ice climbing workshop was in New Hampshire, 4 days of learning to scale frozen waterfalls with crampons and ice axes. It was terrifying and exhilarating and exactly the kind of challenge I craved. I fell twice, held by ropes and safety systems, and climbed back up each time stronger than before. On the last day, perched on a frozen cliff face, with nothing but my skill and determination keeping me attached to the ice, I thought about the girl who'd given up her camping trip, who'd folded herself small to make room for others, who'd believed her wants were less important than everyone else's needs. She felt impossibly distant, like someone I'd known in another life. Spring semester brought advanced classes and a research position with a professor studying climate impacts on alpine ecosystems. I spent weekends collecting data at elevation, sometimes solo, sometimes with the professor, always with that sense of purpose. I'd been missing my whole childhood. Jessica called in March with an invitation. How do you feel about Peru? Peru? Summer program, 6 weeks, Machu Picchu, Amazon rainforest, Andean peaks, full expedition with university credit. Her voice was electric with excitement. Please, say you'll apply. I thought about cost, about logistics, about asking my parents for support. Then I thought about who I'd become, about the life I was building on my own terms. Send me the application, I said. I got the scholarship. Full ride, everything covered. When I called home to share the news, Mum was thrilled. Dad was nervous, but proud. Olivia was scrolling through Instagram and said cool without looking up. Their reactions didn't define my joy anymore. Peru was transformative. The mountains were different from anything I'd seen, ancient and sharp and holy. The people were different, warm despite the altitude, generous despite having little. I hiked through cloud forests and along Inca trails, slept under southern hemisphere stars, learned to see the world through frameworks beyond my small American suburb. On the summit of Huayna Picchu, looking down at Machu Picchu spread below like a secret the mountains had kept for centuries, I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Not for social media, just for me. Proof that I'd travelled this far, climbed this high, chosen this life. I sent it to my family with a simple message. Thinking of you all from the top of the world. Mum's response came hours later. So proud of you. Dad's, that's my girl. Olivia's, wow, actually cool. Small words, but they landed differently than they would have a year ago. I'd stopped needing their validation to know my experiences were valuable. They could offer it or not. Either way, I was here, living fully, refusing to shrink. I came back to the States in August taller somehow. Not physically, but in presence, in certainty. I moved into an off-campus apartment with 2 other Outdoor Adventure Club members. We kept our gear organised on the porch, maps plastered on the walls, plans constantly brewing for the next expedition. Sophomore year began with purpose and direction. My major clicked into place. My friendships deepened. My body grew even stronger from regular climbing, backpacking, trail running. I was building a life I actually wanted, populated with people who saw me as essential, not convenient. Olivia called in October. She was struggling, she said. College was harder than high school. Friends were more complicated. She felt lost. I don't know how you just did it, she said. How you left and figured everything out. I didn't figure everything out. I just decided I mattered enough to try. Silence on her end, then. How do you do that? It was the first time she'd ever asked me for advice. The first time she'd seen me as someone with answers instead of someone in her way. You start small, I said. You pick one thing you want and don't let anyone talk you out of it. Then you pick another thing. Eventually, you realize you're allowed to want things, that wanting things isn't selfish. Even if it disappoints people? Especially then. We talked for over an hour, the longest conversation we'd ever had. I couldn't fix her problems, but I could tell her about mine, about the moment I decided to choose myself, about how everything changed when I stopped waiting for permission to live. When we hung up, I felt something unexpected, hope for her, hope that she might learn earlier than I did that her worth wasn't measured by how much she accommodated others. Thanksgiving that year, I did go home. By choice, not obligation. I brought my roommates, introduced them to my family, showed them the trails near my childhood home that I'd never actually hiked because I'd always been too busy being available. We cooked together, Olivia and I working side by side in the kitchen while Mum supervised. Dad told stories about his own college days, genuinely interested in our adventures. It wasn't perfect, families never are, but it was real and mostly good and free from the resentment that had coloured everything before. On Friday, while everyone else slept off their turkey comas, I slipped out alone for a sunrise hike. Local trail, nothing dramatic, but I wanted to see the landscape I'd grown up in through the eyes I had now. The summit was modest, barely worth calling a peak, but it was mine. The place I'd dreamed about during all those years of feeling trapped. I sat on a rock and watched the sun paint the sky in shades of persimmon and gold. My phone buzzed. Message from Jessica. Missing you on the trail this weekend. I smiled and typed back. Home visit, but heading back Sunday. Next weekend's adventure is all ours. Another buzz, this one from Mum. Noticed you slipped out early. I remember you always wanted to hike this trail. Proud of you for making it happen. Love you. The message shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but acknowledgement, especially late acknowledgement, carries its own weight. She was learning to see me, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. I typed back, love you too. Thanks for letting me grow. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist. Below me, the suburbs sprawled in neat rows, houses and schools and shopping centres where people lived lives of quiet accommodation, or fierce independence, or something in between. I'd been raised in one of those houses, shaped by its rules and silences and expectations, but I wasn't defined by it anymore. I'd climbed out and up and away, found terrain that challenged me to be stronger, spaces that celebrated me being fully myself. The girl who'd given up her camping trip would barely recognise me now. The girl who'd believed her wants were inconvenient, her needs negotiable, her existence secondary. I hardly recognised her either, but I remembered her, remembered the pain of being erased, the exhaustion of always bending, the slow death of being convenient. I remembered her, and I honoured her by living the life she'd dreamed about, by choosing myself again and again until choosing myself became natural as breathing, by standing on mountains she'd never thought she'd reach and knowing, deeply certainly, that she deserved to be here. The morning light grew stronger. In the distance, I could see more trails, more peaks, more places I'd go because I wanted to, because I could, because my life was mine to build. I shouldered my day pack and started the descent, back toward the house where I'd learned what I didn't want to become, back toward family, who was slowly learning to see me as someone whole, but also back toward my car, packed and ready for the drive to campus, back toward friends who chose me as first priority, back toward a life of my own design, full of challenges I selected and adventures I planned and moments I refused to sacrifice. The trail curved through autumn trees, leaves crunching under my boots. I hiked with steady rhythm, breathing easy, completely present in my body and my choices. Behind me, the past, all its pain and erasure and small deaths. Ahead of me, the horizon, all its promise and wildness and space to grow. And right here, right now, just me, Sienna, taking up exactly the amount of space I deserved, all of it.